Okay, this is part 11, Your Amazing Destiny. God's people today, Israel or Gentiles? Hello, everybody. I'm Jim McCotter. Welcome. We find in Romans 9:25 through 29, it reads as follows. Concerning the Gentiles, God says in the prophecy of Hosea, those who were not my people, I will call my people. And her who was not beloved, I will call beloved. And in the very place where it was said to them, you are not my people, there they will be called children of the living God. And concerning Israel, Isaiah the prophet cried out, though the people of Israel are as numerous as the sand of the seashore, only a remnant will be saved. For the Lord will carry out his sentence upon the earth quickly and with finality. And Isaiah said the same thing in another place. If the Lord of heaven's armies had not spared a few of our children, we would have been wiped out like Sodom, destroyed like Gomorrah. End quote. Here the Apostle Paul makes clear his point with both the prophet Hosea and Isaiah. It is no longer the nation of rebellious Israel that are God's people, but rather the believing Gentiles and only a remnant of believing Jews. Number one, I will call those who are not my people, my people. That's the believing Gentiles. Number two, and her who was not beloved, I will call beloved. That's the believing Gentiles. Number three, and in every place where it was said to them, you are not my people, there they will be called children of the living God. That's the believing Gentiles. Number four, though the people of Israel are as numerous as the sand of the seashore, only a remnant will be saved. That's the believing remnant of Jews. Do you see what Paul is proving here using the Old Testament? How hard it must have been for the Jews after 2,000 years of being the only nation on earth that represented the people of God to now hear Paul say all that was changing through Jesus, their real Messiah. The Jews could not imagine not being the exclusive nation of God's beloved and God's people. As Paul said in Romans 8:28 and 29, all who love the Lord are predestined to be conformed to the image of God's Son and are glorified. End quote. That was shocking to the Jews, but good news to the world. As Paul declared at the beginning of his letter to the Romans in Romans 1:16 through 17, quote, for I'm not ashamed of the good news about Christ. It's the power of God at work, saving everyone who believes, the Jew first and also the Gentile. The good news tells us how God makes us right in his sight. This is accomplished from start to finish by faith. As the scripture says, it is through faith that a righteous person has life, end quote. So it's not through predestination or election that any person has life, but only, quote, through faith and from start to finish by faith, end quote. Hosea, calling Gentiles my people. Hosea's prophesy, quote, those who were not my people I will call my people, and her who were not beloved I will call beloved, end quote. It's not a statement about individual salvation, but rather the Gentile people. This prophecy addresses the inclusion of Gentile nations into the sphere of God's new covenantal blessing. In Hosea's time, not my people referred to those outside of Israel, the Gentiles. The transition described here is one from the old covenant people of God, Israel, to the new covenant with Gentile nations previously considered outsiders. Importantly, Hosea's vision is corporate. The Gentiles as a whole are being welcomed as my people. This is a shift in God's redemptive plan, opening the doors of mercy beyond one ethnic group or nation. The passage does not describe a deterministic process for individual souls, nor does it reject the idea of individual free will in matters of faith. Instead, it makes a broad change in God's focus from a single chosen nation to a global tapestry of peoples internationally. Isaiah's cry, the remnant of Israel. Isaiah's words, though the people of Israel are as numerous as the sand of the seashore, only a remnant will be saved, end quote. Further clarifying the collective dimension of God's dealings. The prophet acknowledges that while Israel as a nation is vast, only a small remnant will experience deliverance. Here, remnant refers to those within Israel who believe in the Messiah Christ. But again, the scope is national rather than individual. This concept of remnant is consistent throughout the Old Testament. God repeatedly preserves a faithful portion of Israel even when the majority turn away. The survival of this remnant ensures the continuity of God's promises, and it serves as a seed for future renewal of Israel. The emphasis is on the fate of the nation as a whole, not the predestination of individual souls. God's transition from Israel to Gentile nations. Both Hosea and Isaiah speak to the grand transition in God's plan from Israel alone to the inclusion of Gentile nations. The prophecy, quote, in every place where it was said to them, "You are not my people," there they will be called the children of the living God, end quote, underscores this shift. The Gentile nations, once excluded, are now invited to share in God's covenantal promises. This does not mean that individual choice or free will are nullified. Rather, the prophecies outline the framework within which individuals from all nations may now respond to God's call. The language is collective, but it does not preclude personal faith and decision-making. Remnant theology, not a denial of free will. When Isaiah laments that only a few of our people were spared, lest Israel become like Sodom and Gomorrah, he emphasizes the sovereignty of judgment and the severity of judgment and the mercy of preservation. The survival of a remnant does not suggest that God arbitrarily saves or condemns individuals without regard to individual faith. Instead, it points to God's commitment to maintain a witness and a people faithful to his purposes, even amidst widespread rejection. Conclusion: nations, not just individuals. In summary, these Old Testament prophecies are not arguments against individual free will, nor do they suggest that salvation is unilaterally imposed or withheld at the personal level. The primary concern is the fate of nations, the transition of covenantal status from Israel to Gentile nations, and the preservation of a faithful remnant within a wayward people. Individual salvation remains a matter of personal response. Quote, "Whoever will," as Jesus says. But God's overarching plan encompasses the inclusion, judgment, redemption of entire peoples, Gentile nations. The prophetic voices of Hosea and Isaiah remind us that God's mercy is expansive, his justice is measured, and his invitation stands for all peoples of all nations today to become children of the living God.